everybody. Welcome once again to the Winning Digital Customer Show. I'm Howard Tiersky, and today we are going to talk about how to cheat at digital. In particular, I'm going to share with you two ways that, yes, you too can cheat at digital. Now, why would you want to cheat at digital? Well, I guess the same reason one would want to cheat at anything: to get ahead, to do better, because there's competition, because you're being scored, because you're being graded, because life is short. Now, why might you not want to cheat? Because it's not the right thing to do. Well, guess what? Today, I'm going to show you two ways to cheat at digital transformation that have absolutely no moral impact whatsoever. They are cheats, but they are not wrong in any way, shape, or form by anyone's standards that I know of. Although they may be cheats that you are not taking advantage of. And I say that because I work with dozens and dozens of large brands, and I'm often astonished at how many of these brands either aren't using these two cheats I'm going to share with you today, or are not using them very much. And they have the potential to, just like any kind of cheating, massively increase their success. But unlike most cheating, without the risk of getting caught, because frankly, even if someone knows you're doing it, there's nothing wrong with it. So let's just talk about cheating. Let's talk about sports for a minute, where cheating, of course, is wrong. And I just want to offer you a quick example to point out what great cheats these two things that I'm going to talk about today are. So let's say you wanted to cheat at a sport, like let's say football. Let's say you wanted to cheat at football. Now, how might you do that? I want you to think, what would be the ultimate form of cheating at football? Of course, there are a lot of things you could do, right? You could use some extra gear that you're not allowed to use. You could do, like, certain NFL teams were accused of, and deflate the ball a little bit to try to get a little extra edge. But I want you to think big. I want you to think, what would be a way of cheating that would absolutely positively ensure that you would win the game? I'll wait. Okay. Well, I'm going to offer you, and feel free to put in the chat if you can think of the ultimate way of cheating at sports. But I'm going to suggest to you two things that, if you could do them in sports, would almost guarantee that you would win in any competitive sports game. Would you like to know what they are? Okay. The first one is, if you knew exactly what the other team was going to do. You knew their plays, you knew their plans, you knew their playbooks, you knew what they were thinking. Before you began every play, you knew exactly what they were going to do, what they were at least planning to do in that individual play. Man, if you knew that in advance, that would give you a huge advantage when you approach that individual play. And of course, if you knew that for every play, exactly what the other team was thinking and what they were planning, you'd be way, way ahead. So that's the first big idea. That might be hard to do, but that would be the ultimate. And I'm going to offer you one more thing. So it would be great to know what they were planning to do, but just because you know what they're planning to do doesn't necessarily going to win every play, because they're going to change during the play, right? Sports is a fluid, dynamic thing. It's one thing to know what they're thinking, they're intending to do, but then once you start responding to what they're doing, they may do something different. You don't know exactly what they're going to do in the play itself. You might know their plan, but that's not necessarily what they're going to do to respond to how you go after the quarterback or whatever you're going to do. So here's the second thing, and there's only two. If you knew the plays in advance, that's number one. And here's number two. Imagine you knew how they would react to each and everything that you might do during the play. And I'll use as an analogy here, like video games. You ever play a video game? And it could be a sports video game like football, or it could be any video game where you have to fight the dragon or whatever else. And you go in there and you try to fight the dragon, and he kills you within 2 seconds. And then you realize, oh, I can hide behind this rock and wait for him to come by and then get him from the rear. And you're able to do that. And now he kills you, but it takes 15 seconds. And if you keep playing that video game long enough, eventually you figure out, when you do something, how does the enemy respond? How does the other side respond? And you can start to learn, if I do this, they do this. If I do this, they do this. And I remember being a kid, just to age myself here, show you how old I am, when Pac-Man was out in the arcades. And there were people who could literally play Pac-Man all day because they knew a path through the maze, and they knew what all the other little monsters that were going after them were going to do. If they went left, they knew that monster would go right. If they went up, they knew when, if they went up, the monster would follow them, and when, if they went up, the monster would not follow them. And because they knew in every circumstance, because it was predictable, what was going to happen, they could just play all day on a quarter and get to level, 10,000 or whatever the top level in Pac-Man is. So imagine you knew both of those things. Imagine you were about to play a game and you knew both of those things. You knew exactly what the other team was intending to do at the beginning. You knew what they were thinking, and you had the opportunity to run the same play over and over and over, to try different things. Well, if I go left, what do they do? If I go right, what do they do? If I throw, what do they do? If I run the ball, what do they do? You could run the play as many times as you want, and the only one that counts is the last one. It doesn't matter how many times you die trying to kill the dragon. Eventually, if you do it enough, you figure out how to kill the dragon, and then you're victorious, right? It's not less of a victory because you've been killed 3,000 times by the dragon and you only killed him once. You eventually got him because you have the opportunity to keep resetting it and trying again and again and again and again. So that's the second thing. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, how the heck would I do these things? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you right now at how you do these things with digital. But just to summarize this section, if you knew what the enemy was thinking in advance and you knew what they would do, you had the opportunity to try different plays and see what the outcome would be, to find the best one in which you score. If you could do those two things, I think that would be the ultimate way of cheating at sports. So what does this have to do with digital, e-commerce, digital transformation, succeeding in today's digital age? Well, here's the good news. There are far less structured rules when we play the game of digital. There are some rules. We have GDPR and we have COPPA for children's online privacy and various other laws and rules we have to conform with. And I'm not suggesting you break any of them. But there are obviously a lot less stringent rules than you have in a structured game like football or baseball or basketball. And so these two things, which are impossible and no doubt would also be against the rules in any professional sport, are completely allowable when you create and manage and optimize a digital experience. And so, we've been talking about sports and we've been talking about competing with somebody, kind of like your enemy. Well, who is it really that you're focused on when you're creating a digital experience? It's generally the customer, or possibly if the experience is not for your customer, it's for an employee or somebody else, it's whoever the user of that digital experience is. But for today's purposes, we're just going to refer to that person as the customer. And your goal is no doubt to achieve, in order for you to win with that customer, you're going to have to get them to do something in particular. That's the game of digital. Generally speaking, the vast majority of value that you're going to create in any business, I would argue, but especially in the digital world, is by successfully driving customer behavior, getting them to buy what you want them to buy, getting them to upsell to the more expensive product, getting them to add on ancillary products, getting them not to return the product, getting them to use your less expensive support channels if they need help, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you think of all the things you would ideally want your customer to do, if they do all of those things, your business is going to be in great shape. And by the way, if you can't get your customer to do those things, you're probably in big trouble, no matter what else you may be doing well in your business, right? You can have a great accounting software tool that you're using for your business, but if you can't get your customer to do what you need them to do, it's not going to matter in the end. You're going to be out of business. So the game of business, I would suggest to you, and certainly the game in the digital world, the success is not to get a ball across the goal line. It's not to get a baseball out of the park. It's not to shoot a basketball into a basket. The game is to get the customer to do what we want them to do. And so we have both of these opportunities at our disposal. First of all, oops, that's not the slide I wanted. First of all, let's talk about understanding the playbook of the customer. What is it that the customer is going to do, is trying to do? What is the strategy that the customer is going to engage in when they try to connect with your business? For example, when someone walks into your store or someone opens your app or goes to your website, what are they planning to do? Where are they going to go first? What are their goals and they're trying to accomplish? All of this information is learnable through a wide range of different types of customer research. There's no rule or regulation which prohibits you from going and interviewing your customers, observing your customers, surveying your customers, studying your customer data, and from that, creating a customer journey map that shows you all the different things that your customer does in the course of the interaction and what causes them to go one way, what causes them to go to search, what causes them to browse, what causes them to add things to their shopping cart, what causes them to abandon their shopping cart. All of these things are learnable. You absolutely can find out. It's not like it's a hidden secret playbook that you have to steal from the other team. The customers will be happy to tell you. You may have to give them a few bucks in order to bribe them to spend an hour with you and let them show you their strategy. So this is a lot of what we do at our company around customer research. For example, let's say we're working with an airline on booking travel tickets. We would very often bring different types of travelers into some kind of a circumstance that we can observe them. Could be in person, could be on a tool like Zoom or something else. And we would ask them to go ahead and book some airline tickets. And we would watch how they go about that process. And we would ask them questions along the way to understand their thinking and understand essentially their plan, their strategy. Oh, when I see this, I do that. When I see that the flights, on this airline are only with a stopover, I go over to Orbitz or Expedia and I check there. And then I see whether that's one of the airlines that I have a frequent flyer program with. And then I go check my credit card to see how many miles I have. Customer journey maps are simply a way of articulating and demonstrating what the sequence of activities are that customer goes through and what influences them, kind of like a not a ping pong ball, kind of like a pinball. Well, I guess ping pong balls is true too, but what causes them to go left and what causes them to go right. So the first way of cheating at digital is to simply spend time studying and understanding your customer, so you understand what their playbook is, why they're coming to you, and why they respond the way that they do. It's very discoverable. By the way, in my book, Winning Digital Customers, a Wall Street Journal bestseller, I might add, I provide extensive amount of detailed suggestions and techniques about customer research and how to interact, how to find the people that you want to interview and how to spend time with them and how to ask what questions to ask and what questions not to ask and how to structure the way in which you do this kind of observational research. So if you're looking for more detail on that, you can find the book. And actually the book comes with a bunch of instructional videos as well. So you have all the insight you need to at least get your team started in doing really, really valuable customer research really, really quickly. Now, let's talk about the second way to cheat. The first way is to understand what they are thinking going in. The second way, as you recall, is to be like a video game, to be able to play the play out over and over and over and over and figure out what works and what doesn't work. Sounds like a dream in football, right? That's how people beat video games, as I said. Well, that's user testing, prototype testing. Usually what we do in our business is, as we're building, like, for example, we built the new designed the new roadside app for AAA for when motorists are stranded, or we've worked with companies on apps that control satellites or banking applications or travel booking applications, et cetera, all kinds of tools like this. And so what we do, once we understand the mindset of the customer, we then start to theorize what might be the right type of experience to get them to engage in the behavior that we want, such as book an airline flight. Just like we might theorize when we come up with our play in football, this is a way to get a touchdown. This is a way to I'm going to go right. The quarterback's going to go left. I'm going to pass. Someone's going to catch. Someone's going to block them. And in that way, we theorize we're going to get the ball to the end zone. But you know what? You might try it in football and discover that the quarterback gets sacked, or somebody blocks the intercepts your pass, and now they're running the ball the other direction. Then you say, oh, okay, well, that didn't work. But in football, of course, it's too late. The other team has the ball. But in digital, it's not too late, because what we do is we do prototyping. We'll bring mock-ups. They can be as simple as a drawing on a piece of paper, or they can be as sophisticated as an interactive prototype that runs on a phone or runs on a computer that almost could fool you into making you think that it's the real application. And then we ask customers or representative people who are representative of our different customer segments to use this prototype so we can observe whether it works, whether it doesn't, how they go through the process, and whether they engage in the behavior we want, or whether they get frustrated, or whether they get confused, or whether they say, at this point, I would leave, I would go to another website, etc. And that's just like that video game. The first time, maybe we don't slay the dragon, but we learn what we did wrong. And then the goal is to build these prototypes so they're easily changeable, so I can come back again, maybe the next day, and try the prototype some more. And by the way, I don't just show that prototype to one customer because not everyone's going to respond in exactly the same way. But if I show a prototype to 10 or 12 customers, very often I can get a sense of the patterns. A lot of customers are having this problem, or a lot of customers are frustrated by this. Great, let's make a change. Next round of the video game. Will we slay the dragon this time? Maybe we get a little farther, but then we hit another problem, okay? Make a change, and so on, just like with the video game. And if you do that through the prototyping and iteration process, you can wind up with a digital experience where you know how that customer is going to respond when you build it and you put it live. You don't have to run the risk that, well, we're going to throw it out there and we're going to see what happens. And that's the second way to cheat at digital. To not only know what the customer is thinking coming in, but having tested prototypes of your application enough times that you know that you can get through every single time and slay the dragon. And once you're there, well, you've cheated. And you're much more likely to get an A on your test. And of course, in the digital and business world, what does that mean? It means lower cost of customer acquisition, higher customer conversion, higher sales, more profitability. And of course, that ultimately grows the value of your company. So that's it. That's my tip for today. 2 ways to cheat at digital transformation. Whoops. And I want to end with, that was a slide that I skipped earlier. There's a quote. I read an Inc. magazine article recently, and they pulled a quote from Warren Buffett. That's actually from I think a speech he gave like 10 years ago. And what he said in that speech is he said, the interesting thing about business is it's not like the Olympics. You don't get any extra credit for the fact that something's very hard to do. So you might as well just step over 1-foot bars instead of trying to jump over 7-foot bars. So there's not as many rules like there are in the Olympics. You can make it easier for yourself to succeed. And so I think that is very much aligned, even though Warren Buffett is not advocating that anybody cheat. And honestly, as you can probably figure out, neither am I, not really. It's just a cute way of teeing up this concept of really making your life easier, making it easier to be successful. Don't throw the dart blindfolded. There are tools and techniques to line it up so you know when you let that dart out of your fingers that it's going to hit the bullseye, or at least very, very likely hit the bullseye. Hit the bullseye many, many times out of 10 or out of 100 or whatnot. And that's the same outcome we drive when we do this type of research to understand what customers are thinking, do journey maps, create prototypes, and test the prototypes so we know what the outcome will be when we bring something live. And I'll just end with this thought. You might think to yourself, it sounds kind of obvious. Of course. Why did you take 20 minutes talking about this? Because even though we do it every day, all day long at my company, we've got scores of people who are out there every single day with tons of clients doing this sort of work every day. I am continuously shocked how many companies are trying to leap over 7-foot bars, as Warren Buffett would say. And what does that really mean? It means they're trying to sit there in a conference room and figure out what their customers would like. And they're coming up with an idea, and they're designing it, and they're building it without ever really knowing for sure whether it's a play that will work with the customer. It might, right? You don't have to know everything that's in your opposing team's mind. You don't have to have played the play out many times in order for a play to be successful, of course. But if you want to increase substantially the likelihood that that play has been successful, if you do those 2 things, the odds are drastically different. And so this is certainly not something that is new to the world. I've been doing this type of work for 20 years. And of course, I'm not the only one, needless to say. But I am continuously amazed at how many companies do none of this or do very little of this. And instead, they put all their focus and their investment into coming up with an idea that they think is great and then building it and making it as great as possible in their own sort of judgment. And well, all I can say is no matter how much you pre-think a play, if you don't know what your opponent is thinking and you don't know how they're going to respond to your play, your chances of success are only so good. So take advantage of these opportunities to cheat at digital, to cheat at e-commerce. They're right there in front of you. If you need any more guidance in terms of the specifics of how to execute this type of research or how to analyze it or interpret it or make it actionable, you can check out my book. You can obviously always reach out to me personally as well. This is what my company does professionally. So we're always happy to help people do that type of work with them. But you can also just read my book and learn an enormous amount about the details of how this kind of work is done. Hopefully that's been helpful to you. So thank you as always for watching and listening, and have a fantastic, before I go though, I want to mention that we are now broadcasting this show live in Clubhouse. So if you go to the Digital Leaders Lodge Club in Clubhouse, you can, of course, continue to watch this show wherever you may watch it. Our audience is usually comprised of a combination of LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, where we broadcast the show live every Monday and Wednesday. But we now have added a fourth. We are now putting this show out in Clubhouse, and I will stay on after each one of these live casts for a discussion and conversation. So if any of you have questions, you, of course, can continue to ask your questions, as you guys have been doing for many, many months on these other forums where you can type a question in, and I'm happy to answer them. But on Clubhouse, you can actually, speak. And if you're not familiar with Clubhouse, kind of like Zoom plus Facebook. I don't know. Basically, I'm there live, voice. You can come in. We can have a conversation. So if you'd like to do that, join me in the Digital Leaders Lodge in Clubhouse. I look forward to seeing you there. Or otherwise, of course, you can continue to do stuff the way you've always done it on your preferred social media platform. With that, have a fantastic day, everyone. Keep transforming.